Hey, I'm Bill DeYoung, and welcome back to the Catalyst Sessions. Today, my guest is Michael Connelly, who is the author of 35 novels. I think I have the number correct. Sold something like 60 million books, and is the best-selling crime author in the United States, in the world, most likely. Do you keep track of such things? How do you know how many books, how many Bosch books you have, how many McAvoy, etc.? Do you actually know? Is it a figure in your mind?
I always trip up on how many Bosch books because he's appeared in many different books, and it's like, what is a Bosch book? What isn't? That kind of thing. So the numbers are the numbers. It's not really something I'm thinking about a whole lot. I obviously know the total number that I've written 35 books, but the other stuff is more often than not, stuff they put into PR mailings and things like that.
I wondered if you meet somebody at a cocktail party. Say, I really like that Lincoln Lawyer series you do. How many of those you got? You can't pull the number out of your head.
Well, sort of. I think with him I can say 6. But again, he's another one. He's in a lot of the Bosch books, so
yeah,
not a quick answer. It's in the only one that's a quick answer is, I think, the reporter Jack McAvoy, because I pretty clearly feel like I've only written 3 books about him.
Well, I definitely want to talk about Fair Warning, which is the one you have out now. We are here. One of the reasons we're here is because, Michael, you've contributed a short story to Tampa Bay Noir, which we've been talking about here on the Catalyst Sessions for a while. It's called The Guardian, and Bosch is in it. Bosch comes to Tampa. I read it yesterday. Is that something you thought about for a while? I mean, you have a home in Tampa. You spend some time here. You know Tampa. I'd love to set something there. Let me bring Bosch there.
Interesting. It allowed me, when Colette Bancroft asked me to do it. I'm not a big short story guy. I find them very difficult to write and write well. I can't think of whether I've ever written a really good one. So it's a learning process for me. And, you think, oh, it's only 20 pages, 15 pages, just knock it off. It's very hard to knock it off. And I just recently had a conversation where I said, when I agree to do a short story, it puts a psychic burden on me that influences other stuff in my life. And so I look for ways of trying to make it a little bit easier. And so probably not many people remember this, but my 4th book, which was published all the way back in 1996, Harry Bosch comes to Tampa chasing a lead. And he's here for 2 nights. And he goes to Burns Steakhouse, and what it was is I was living in California, but I had family, including one of the grandmothers, 2 of the grandmothers of our daughter, were in the Tampa area, and so I was coming home, coming to Florida a lot to visit, and I thought, oh, if I put Harry going to Tampa, I can write off all my expenses. So this is the way I was thinking in 1996. And he has a romantic kind of one-night stand or liaison with an artist, a painter named Jasmine. Mm-hmm. And she was living in a place where I had a good friend living. And so it was like I could just research the physicality of where I wanted to go with Harry Bosch in that book through friends and family and so forth. And so that was in that book. And for all these years later, I've always kind of thought of whatever happened to Jasmine. And so that sent me an email saying, we're doing a Tampa Bay version of this series. I thought, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And maybe I'll use this story to check in on Jasmine.
Tell me the name of the book that she's in, because I don't know that one. I'm going to go read it now.
Okay, it's called The Last Coyote.
Because I liked this story, The Guardian. I will tell you, because I liked Jasmine a lot, and I will tell you that I thought it was too short. I'm turning the pages. Well, this is really getting interesting, and boom, there's the big ending. And then I went, Bill, it's short stories, and I'm used to the longer form.
Mine are, as far as short stories go, I usually write really short ones because I want to kind of get in and get out. As I say, I mean, I shouldn't be talking like this. We're supposed to talk about how good this volume of books, and I've read some of the stories like Lori Roy's and so forth. They're really good.
Yeah. Oh, no, no doubt. Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, I think, the black sheep of the collection. But I do have that connection to Tampa. I lived there part of the time, and I to the house that Jasmine lives in from my own. So it's all part of a neighborhood that I know pretty well. And so more often, more so with this story than when I get asked to do other stories, I really wanted to jump in on this one because it was kind of like a pitch over the plate to me.
Your history in Florida, biographically, I guess you were young when your family moved to Fort Lauderdale. I've always wondered, during your time as a journalist in Daytona and all the amazing stuff you did with the Sun Sentinel, et cetera, I know you had minored in creative writing. First of all, I wanted to ask you before we go anywhere else if you studied with Harry Crews.
Yes and no. I had a total of 3 classes with him, and he only showed up to 1.5.
That sounds about right.
One, he never showed up the entire semester. It was taught by a graduate assistant who kept saying Harry should be coming here, and he never made it. And I found out later he had broken his arm in some kind of barroom brawl while doing a story for Esquire or something like that.
Yeah,
it was a romantic story, but it left us in the class kind of short because I double majored. I had creative writing, and this was like was going to be a small group of, I think it was 8 students and Harry Crews, and I missed out on that opportunity. And then I had a similar one that he was in and out of, and then I had a massive one where it was 100+ students, and it was a basic introduction to literature, which they made him teach back in the early days.
I worked for the newspaper up there for 20 odd years, and what a character. I mean, I love talking to him. It was always just an adventure to go to that house and talk to him. So my question was this, though. During the time you're a working journalist, this is a means to an end for me? I'm a novelist. I'm just, or was that always in the front of the back of your mind that one day I'm giving all this up, I'm going to be a writer? Well, or was it simpler than that?
You're giving me more confidence than I had. And so it was a hopeful means to an end. And it was, I think I could be a novelist, or I want to be a novelist. So it wasn't, so yeah, it was a means to an end, but it was a pretty interesting means, as you know. I mean, it's a great job. And for a while, I straddled both jobs. I started getting novels published, and I was doing both of them. And it was really hard for me to choose one. But ultimately, I felt that, well, what happened was I took a 6-month sabbatical to see if my writing of fiction would improve with a complete focus, not like write at night and then the next day go do newspaper stories.
Good question. Did it?
Yeah, and it did. I mean, in fact, coming back around to it, it was The Last Coyote was the book I wrote with an uninterrupted focus.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so much better in terms of quality and content and so forth, almost on every level from the first 3 books I had published. And so that, I came back from the sabbatical. I promised I'd come back, and it was like I was, by that time I was checked out, and I knew I had to pursue fiction novel writing as a full-time thing. So I only lasted about 4 more months, and then
When you were in LA and doing the crime beat, was it, you were already running, then I guess you wrote the Black Echo out there, I'm gonna guess. But
I wrote 2 novels that were never published when I was in Florida, and what I call the learning experiences. And then I moved out to LA, and the 3rd book I actually wrote became my first book published. That was The Black Echo.
Well, what I'm saying though, Michael, is what I'm asking is that must have been a galvanizing thing, kind of immersing yourself in that world. Yes, I want to do more with this, and that must have increased your confidence too, that you were covering it professionally. And I can imbue my writing with the grit of what I'm seeing every day.
Yeah, I mean, I knew, and especially this was before the internet, dating myself here. So a lot of what I knew and what I saw was not available as it's so available now. You can go online, you can see crime scene videos, you can see all kinds of weird stuff. But back then you couldn't. And so I knew my press pass gave me an entree into a world that very few people who want to do what I want to do, write novels, have. And so I did treasure it. I did revel in it. And it did kind of galvanize me and say, like, I can't waste this. I have this entree. I got to do something with it. And, you know, that kept my, helped keep my, you know, my nose to the grindstone, I think.
You said, I'm jumping around here, but I want to talk about Fair Warning, which is the book you have out now, which is, I guess, the third McAvoy book.
Right.
Right. Okay. But you have said, there was another interview where you said, I don't know, maybe you didn't say this was the easiest character for you to write, but he thinks like you. That, and you said this in numerous interviews, even one that you and I did a few months ago when we talked about Fair Warning, that McAvoy being a journalist, that's the easiest one for you to stand in his shoes. And
Yeah.
he speaks, did you say that he speaks almost in your voice?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the process of writing fiction is, you know, you have these made up characters. Most of the time I write about either Harry Bosch or Mickey Hall, the defense lawyer, and that takes research. I have to go to detectives or defense lawyers and say, you know, what would he do in this situation? What would he say? How would he respond? You know, all these different things, and that puts time into it. And I'm not complaining about that. It's also a lot of fun to do that kind of research.
Yeah.
But with Jack McAvoy, he's essentially my alter ego. And I know I've not been a journalist, a working journalist, in like going on 25 years now. It's amazing. But you have those instincts, and probably in my heart of hearts, I still feel I'm a journalist. And so when I'm writing Jack, he just comes out of me. He says what I would say. He does what I would say. He objects to what I would object to. Right. His worldview. And especially when it comes to the media and bureaucracy and politics, I share all that. And so that makes that process much smoother and quicker. And so, you know, 3 for 3, the 3 times I've written a Jack McAvoy book, I've had a second book come out that year. It's because of the time. The McAvoy books don't take me as much time.
Well, to stay on that for a second, what was it about that sort of whole illicit DNA market that caught your attention, that said, yeah, let's do something with this?
It was this,
I mean, I know you're on the board of the actual Fair Warning, and so maybe your radar's out for that sort of thing.
No, I mean, I felt like, you know, what was going on in the world in politics and how the media was being treated, and this growing gulf between those who trust the media and those who don't, the growing numbers of people who don't trust the media. That bothered me, and so so 2 things were going on. One is I wanted to bring Jack McAvoy. I hadn't written about him in 11 years. I wanted to bring him back, check on him, use him in some way of telling a story that would at least hint at my discomfort with how the media is being viewed right now, and at the same time show a story about a undaunted journalist, seeker of the truth, and try to show the value of journalism and why it should be trusted. So that was one thing completely, but then what's the subject matter? And I just got, as often happens, things spark my attention. And I just happened to see a newspaper story that said the Pentagon had issued a directive to everyone in the military saying, don't give your DNA to any of these analytical sites because we have concerns about the security of the DNA. And that was like, so I have so many friends. I haven't done it myself, but I have so many friends who have gone down this path and found out about them.
The genealogy thing. Yeah, right.
And I know it's a huge industry. So I thought, well, that's pretty interesting when the Pentagon is concerned about security. So I started doing, like a reporter, I started doing research and, kind of went down the rabbit hole with it and found out stuff that only made it more intriguing and mysterious and concerning. So I kind of had that component now. I would have Jack working and taking, giving a take on where we are now in terms of media. And this would be the story he was pursuing. So it all kind of came together. And then you mentioned Fair Warning. Yes, Fair Warning is a real news site that started by a colleague of mine from my LA Times days. And so I've been a supporter of it and been on the board and so forth when it was first started 10 years ago.
Do you ever miss it, being a journalist? I mean, your life's a lot different now than it was when did you say 25 years? My God.
Yeah, I don't. It's funny. I don't miss
You
that.
don't miss the money, right? You don't.
Yeah.
We know journalists don't make money.
I miss the reporting part of it because I feel there's some reporting, at least some, in my books. I try to be accurate all the time, and that takes reporting. It takes me asking questions and going to places. So that is fulfilled. But as you know, a newsroom is a fun place to be, or it used to be when I was in it. I was in it when it was profitable. They flew people in first class. And, it's a world that we can't even remember now. But
Yeah.
that was my career in journalism was during that time, and I did miss the camaraderie and all that. And I've really gotten it back in recent years on a smaller scale, but I work in the writing room of the TV show Bosch, and that's a room with 7 writers and some assistants and so forth, and it very much feels like a newsroom to me because it's a place of ideas being thrown out, and there is some competition, but there's pranking, and there's all the things that I used to get in a newsroom are right there in a writing room for a TV show. And so it's been a fun 5-6 years of getting that back.
I hadn't thought of that. That's interesting. Well, before I go into talking about TV, you mentioned that you have another book coming out. There's another Mickey Haller book coming out in November, I think. So you did write 2 this year. What's that one called?
The Law of Innocence. I actually, it's funny, when 2 come out, they're not written in the same year. So I actually wrote 2 last year, and then this year 2 come out. So it's been a little bit of an easier year this year.
Has COVID affected the way, your working patterns? Do you find yourself, I don't know, I don't want to say unable to write, but I mean, has it changed your work rhythms in any way at all? I mean, I'm going to ask you about the series in a minute, but as far as writing.
Initially, I was unable to write when it first happened because I was more than halfway into the book that comes out in November. I was, I don't know, 60 to 70% into that book. And it's a courtroom thriller, and it was set in April of this year. We set my books in the year they're published. And so even though we hadn't gotten to April yet, I was setting it in April. And that's how I do my books. And then if some world event happens, I go back and filter it in and so forth. But this was huge, and the courts were closed. So I had to rethink the whole book, and it kind of paralyzed for 3 or 4 weeks. And, and I figured out a plan of how to go back to the beginning and retool it and restart it, set it. I started it basically in December of last year, and it goes up into the start of the pandemic. So I had to kind of retool and restart things. And then once that happened, I got my momentum back and everything was fine. I can't complain about anything. For 25 years, I've been writing at home. And so a lockdown was very similar to what a lot of my life was like. The TV stuff all got shuttered and hasn't opened up yet. But that was a change. But the TV stuff has always been kind of a side practice to me. I'm a book writer first, so
yeah. When we spoke in it was May, I think, you were talking about March when the pandemic curtain fell, as it were, and you said that the Lincoln Lawyer TV series was just about to go into production. You told me the story, and everything just got. The cast, crew, everybody was ready. It was like a couple of days away from the start of production. Where are we now? I mean, you were looking at CBS had bailed. You were going to shop it around. Where are we now?
Yeah, we're still shopping around, or I should say we're negotiating. So I can't say anything about it, but I think the Lincoln Lawyer will ride again in TV. Hopefully, before the end of this year, we'll know exactly what's going on. But yeah, we were literally 3 days away from starting to film a series, and then first it got delayed, and that was not that great, and then it got completely canceled. So it was kind of a 1-2 punch, but hopefully we'll end up winning the rounds, and pretty soon I'll know something for sure.
So you can't Will it be the same cast and all that, or is that sort of, I don't know how Hollywood works, you know?
Well, you think I know?
All right.
No, I mean, if we find another home, we would like to bring everything that we have that we were about to go. We have directors,
Sure.
locations, we have a writing team. But if if a new boss takes over a new network or a new studio, they're going to want to have some say in things. So it remains to be seen what will happen.
Well, let's talk about Bosch. Season 7. I'm going to go out on a limb here and just predict, like Karnak, that the production has been delayed and you haven't started yet.
Right.
But that was, I know, season 7 is going to be the final season, and I would like to talk about that. But are all the scripts written and everybody's just waiting to go back to work? Where's that?
I mean, it was, well, first off, here's a news flash. Literally 15 minutes before I got on this with you, I finished writing the last episode. So we have been writing, and I just finished the last episode.
Wow.
We sort of got lucky with, it's weird to say this, lucky with the pandemic. The timing of the pandemic was lucky for us because we start the writing room every year in March, and then we start filming at the end of July. And so writing was going forward. Then we just kind of worked from home and Zoomed and things like that. And production has been delayed 2 months. So we're looking at the end of September as going into production. So ultimately, we're only talking about a 2-month delay. If that all holds up, you never know what's going to happen with this pandemic, if things turn good or whatever. So in the meantime, we put it off 2 months as far as production goes, but the writers kept writing and the scripts were being tweaked and fine-tuned and sent in to Amazon and approved and so forth. And so the showrunner, Eric Overmeyer, and I are going to write the last episode because we've been in it since episode 1. We wrote together. And so I did the first draft, and that's what I finished today, and that will go to Eric, and he'll do the polish and the tweaks and whatever he wants to do. He's the ultimate creative boss of the show, the showrunner. And so, we're in pretty good shape. I don't think we've ever had all the scripts finished when we started filming. This time we probably will.
Something you said earlier, just kind of, I drew a little circle around it in my mind. The camaraderie of the writer's room, right? You're the creator of the damn thing. And I know that, it's a process and it's teamwork. Does the buck stop with you in the writer's room? If you don't like an idea, can you just say, no, that's not happening?
I got to do it a little bit more politely. That's not happening. But the thing is, we've been very careful in picking our staff, and the staff has had very little turnover. So we've had writers that have been on it for the whole 7 years and so forth. And I sense I have that power. Have I ever used it? I haven't had to. On small levels, I'd say something like, I don't know if Harry Bosch would do that because of this is the past that we've actually established in the show and the books. So this is a little deviation from the character we know. That's the kind of stuff I would say. And rarely, probably I could hold up 5 fingers, and that's the number of times in 7 seasons I've said, no, let's not go that direction, or let's not do this. It's people that are very familiar with the books when we brought them in. Yeah. And it's lucky, Eric kind of put together a cast of writers who revere the work. I mean, you can get into things, and I've been involved in other Hollywood projects that didn't go anywhere, where the writer wants to show you what they can do, and they don't even use your work as a blueprint. It's not even the level of blueprint, and then you end up with something that is not much like the book, the originating material, and then it begs the question, why did you even buy my book if this is what you want to make? And all the time, basically, those kind of projects kind of founder and never go anywhere.
Can we say blood work? You and I have talked about this before. I think Blood Work is an example of what you're talking about, the Clint Eastwood movie, where
it changed a lot, but that was not the writer saying, let me show you what I could do. Clint Eastwood is very, set and clear on what he wants to do. And I think this was the movie that was made was his version of the story he wanted to tell, and the writer followed his direction in adapting the book, or I should say adapting parts of the book.
I was going to say, how very diplomatic of you.
No, I mean it's funny. I always tell this story, or I don't always, but I told the story that one of the reasons I became a writer was at University of Florida. I saw the movie The Long Goodbye at the Dollar movie night they had at the Student Union on Mondays, and that led me to read the book. And the book is quite different. The ending is different in the movie. They changed the ending of the book, and but I saw the movie first, so I loved the movie. And so then years later, I'm a writer and so forth, and I'm in the world of publishing and bookstores and so forth. And so many people feel that the movie version, Long Goodbye, by Robert Altman, the director, is quote unquote an abomination. And I've always thought, no, that's a good movie. And I'm a writer probably because of that movie. And then years later, I had the same thing happen to me. A book that I wrote became and they completely changed the ending.
Raymond Chandler was a big influence on you. Is that correct?
Yeah. From that experience.
From that experience, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that movie led me to read all of his books. I mean, there weren't a lot, 7 books, seven novels, and, I read them all, stopped going to class. I mean, Harry Cruz wasn't even in class, so why should I go?
Now, his books are interesting. There's some really crummy ones, too, but the good ones are unbelievable. They're, a combination of, like, great intrigue and weirdness and, allure. And, of course, there are a lot of bad ones, too. Let's put it that way. Hey, what did you think of that? Were you involved in, and what did you think of the Lincoln Lawyer film?
I liked the film a lot. I wasn't very involved in it. My involvement really began with McConaughey. What happened was that was a 5-year process of getting that movie made. And at first they sent me the first draft and script, which I didn't like, and I gave something like 9 pages of notes on, which incensed the producers, and so I never heard from them for 5 years. And so then I got, actually not even through them, through a friend who's in the industry, said, hey, I heard that McConaughey signed up to play Lincoln Lawyer, and I was like, well, that's news to me. I hope he didn't sign up to that script I read 5 years ago. And then I got a call from him saying, I know I've done some background on you. I know you're not a lawyer, but you had to research this with lawyers. You hooked me up with those lawyers because I got to research this part. And I'd also like to talk to you about the script. And I actually said to Matthew McConaughey, I'd love to talk to you about the script, but I haven't seen the script in 5 years. So he emailed me a script, and it was by the same writer, but it was like the 15th version of it. And he had worked it out through the years and through, whatever writing sessions he had. And it was a really good script. I liked it. So the writer redeemed himself in a big way. And then I introduced McConaughey to the lawyers I had used. And I think his performance was really good. So I kind of think, when you say, what was your involvement? Well, hopefully I helped his performance because I got him to hang with the lawyers who the character's based on.
Is that with Bosch, you being so heavily involved in it, I remember you saying was, a precondition for allowing it to happen. Was that a little daunting, like somebody else is doing the Mickey Haller one? Couldn't you have just said, no, you can't do it unless I'm involved? Or is it, I don't know, is it a money thing? I don't know. How's that work?
Yeah, back when I sold it, it was a hot item. And so it was a competitive situation. And I'll admit, I made a lot of money on it, but I didn't take the most money. What happened was I did some due diligence and talked to the producers who wanted it. There's three entities were in competition to get to Lincoln Lawyer. This is before it was even published. It was just a good concept. The lawyer who works out of Baxter's Lincoln.
Yeah.
So when you can shrink things down to a 1 or 2 line concept, and it's good, Hollywood really comes calling. And one of the producers had been a trial attorney in Chicago, and he won a massive, I think it was an asbestos suit, and his cut range of hundreds of millions of dollars, his fee. It was like a class action $1 billion settlement type thing.
Yeah.
And he took his big paycheck and said, I'm out of here. I'm moving to LA and making movies. And that's what he did. And he won an Oscar for Best Picture on $1 Million Baby. And so, and so he came to me and goes like, I used to do this for a living. I was Mickey Haller, and you got it right on the page, and I'm going to get it right. If you give this to me, I will get it right in the movie. And something about that conversation made me go with him, and it was less money because he was an independent producer. But that's another level of my involvement. My involvement was really key in choosing who would do it, and I think I chose right.
Was he the guy that hired the writer who did the really kind of cheesy first draft of that?
Yeah.
Turned out okay.
Yeah, but I think that producer was a lot of the influence because he was a lawyer, so he probably worked with the writer. Sure. And through many permutations, it came around. And you know, I read books and other things by the writers. He's done great stuff. So,
well, let's remind everybody that you have a story in Tampa Bay Noir, which is out this week, and of course, Fair Warning is in bookstores, both virtual and real, and brick and mortar, as we speak. Michael Connelly, an absolute pleasure. I understand you're participating in the Festival of Reading in November.
Yeah.
So we'll see you on the interwebs again then, I suppose.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for joining us today, man.
Thanks for having me again.
We'll see you soon.
Okay. Take care.
Okay.